Captain Maya Rodriguez had never seen Jupiter look so beautiful. From the observation deck of the UES Prometheus, the gas giant's swirling storms created a hypnotic dance of amber and cream against the void. This was supposed to be a day of celebration. Humanity's first interplanetary peacekeeping fleet assembled in full formation, a symbol of Earth's unified future among the stars. "Captain, we're detecting anomalous readings near Ganymede." Lieutenant Kessler's voice crackled through her comm. "Mass displacement consistent with, well, nothing in our database, Mom." Maya tensed. "Classification." "That's just it. The computer can't classify them. These readings suggest objects larger than our heaviest dreadnought, but they're registering almost no electromagnetic signature." She was already moving toward the bridge when the flash came, brilliant and silent in the vacuum. The UES Dauntless, pride of Earth's fleet, didn't explode so much as unravel. One moment it was there, a 15,000-ton marvel of human engineering. The next, it was a rapidly expanding cloud of subatomic particles. "Battle stations," Maya ordered, her mind processing what her eyes refused to believe. "All hands, combat positions. Initiate stealth protocols and get us into Jupiter's radiation belt." The Prometheus, designated as a medical frigate, was never meant for combat. Its experimental stealth systems, designed to evacuate wounded from hot zones, might be their only chance. On the tactical display, the unknown vessels emerged from Ganymede's shadow. 7 ships of impossible configuration, their hulls flowing like quicksilver as they changed formation. They moved with deliberate precision toward Earth's assembled fleet. Admiral Chandra's voice came through all channels. "Unknown vessels, this is Admiral Vihan Chandra of the United Earth Systems. We are on a peaceful mission, and..." His transmission cut off as the UES Intrepid disintegrated. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Maya watched in horrified silence as the alien warships systematically targeted Earth's fleet. Their weapons fired beams of coherent energy unlike anything in human arsenal, not destroying ships so much as unmaking them, converting matter to energy with terrifying efficiency. "Record everything," she ordered, her voice steady despite the carnage unfolding on the view screen. "Full spectrum analysis. We need to understand what we're seeing." 17 minutes later, the last human warship imploded under the aliens' assault. 342 vessels and over 70,000 personnel gone. The unknown ships lingered for several moments, as if ensuring nothing remained, then accelerated at impossible speed toward the outer system. Lieutenant Kessler's face was ashen. "They didn't even try to communicate." "No," Maya said quietly. "They didn't need to." This was a statement. 3 days later, the Prometheus limped into Mars orbit, carrying the only survivors, and more importantly, detailed sensor records of humanity's most devastating defeat. Within hours, Maya stood before the hastily assembled Scientific Defense Council in a secure bunker beneath Olympus Mons. 17 minutes, she said, her uniform still stained with the blood of crew members injured during their desperate escape. "That's how long it took them to destroy technologies we spent a century developing." Dr. Xian Wei, a quantum physicist with a reputation for breakthroughs others deemed impossible, studied the footage frame by frame. His eyes widened as he noticed microscopic distortions in space-time around the alien vessels just before they fired. "These aren't conventional weapons," he whispered. "They're creating localized reality bubbles, temporarily rewriting physics within a defined area." The room fell silent until Dr. Emily Kagawa, whose work on theoretical propulsion had been ridiculed for years, stood up. The diminutive scientist had a dangerous gleam in her eyes. "If they can rewrite physics," she said, "then we need to learn how to break it." Maya looked at the assembled scientists, Earth's best and brightest, now humanity's last hope. She recognized something in their expressions that gave her the first flicker of hope she'd felt since watching the fleet die. Not fear, not despair. Determination. "Your proposal is insanity," General Hammond slammed his fist on the table. We need ships. Weapons. Not whatever this is. Dr. Emily Kagawa didn't flinch. 6 months of non-stop work had hollowed her cheeks and streaked her hair with premature gray. But her eyes burned with the same intensity that had first caught Captain Rodriguez's attention in the bunker beneath Olympus Mons. Ships. Kagawa gestured to the holographic display, showing the devastation of Earth's fleet. They unmade 70,000 of our people in 17 minutes. Building more conventional weapons is just creating more targets. The hastily constructed command center on Ceres buzzed with activity as Project Crescendo entered its final phase. Engineers and physicists worked alongside asteroid miners, repurposing equipment never designed for military applications. General Maya Rodriguez, now Admiral following the deaths of the entire chain of command, spoke quietly. We've tried it your way. The automated defense platforms you insisted on were destroyed in 30 seconds. She nodded to Kagawa. Show them. The physicist activated a new hologram. Thousands of points of light appeared, scattered throughout the asteroid belt. Each marker represents a gravity modulator. Individually, they're simple, just focused gravitational lenses. Together, she tapped a command, and the points connected in complex, shifting patterns. Together, they form what we're calling a gravity symphony. The modulators create overlapping fields that can be precisely controlled, allowing us to alter the gravitational constants of specific regions of space. You're saying you can make things heavier? Hammond asked skeptically. I'm saying we can make space itself behave differently in targeted areas, Kagawa corrected. We can create gravitational eddies that disrupt navigation, pockets where light moves differently, regions where energy weapons disperse harmlessly. Lieutenant Amara Okafor, newly transferred from Earth's Nigeria base, studied the patterns with unusual intensity. It's like a musical score, she murmured. Kagawa turned, surprised. Exactly. Each modulator is like a single note, meaningless alone, but together, they create harmonies, Okafor completed. Her fingers moved slightly, as if playing an invisible instrument. I see counterpoint structures here. And here, that's a fugue pattern. You understand music theory. I was a concert pianist before joining the Defense Forces. Okafor's eyes never left the display. These patterns, they're beautiful but rigid, algorithmic. They have to be precisely calculated, Kagawa began. They need to breathe, Okafor interrupted. Music isn't just notes on a page. It lives in the spaces between, in the improvisation. Before Kagawa could respond, the alarm sounded. The tracking station had detected what everyone feared. The consortium had returned, a fleet 3 times larger than before approaching from beyond Neptune's orbit. 8 days later, Admiral Rodriguez watched from Ceres Command as the alien armada approached Mars. The plan had seemed elegant in simulations. In practice, it was terrifying to bet humanity's survival on untested technology. They're entering the field of influence, a technician reported. Gravity modulators at full power. On the tactical display, the consortium fleet maintained perfect formation, a disciplined approach that had overwhelmed Earth's defenses before. Then, as they crossed an invisible threshold, chaos erupted. The lead vessels suddenly veered off course, as if hit by unseen forces. Others began to spin uncontrollably. The precision energy weapons that had decimated Earth's fleet fired wildly, missing targets or striking their own ships. What's happening? Hammond demanded. The symphony, Rodriguez breathed. It's working. But something was wrong. The patterns were shifting faster than the programmed sequences. Rodriguez turned to see Okafor at the control interface, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls like they were piano keys. Lieutenant, what are you doing? Improvising. Okafor replied without looking up. Her eyes were closed, her expression one of intense concentration. The algorithms were too predictable. They were adapting. On the display, 3 consortium dreadnoughts suddenly imploded as localized gravity spiked to 50 times normal. Others found themselves trapped in spiraling orbits, unable to escape as their drives failed against the fluctuating reality. "My God," Hammond whispered. Rodriguez watched in awe as Okafor's hands continued their intricate dance. The gravity fields responded in real time, shifting unpredictably, creating crescendos where enemy vessels compressed and diminuendos that left others drifting harmlessly. For the first time since first contact, humanity had found a weapon that worked against the technological superiority of the consortium, not through matching their technology, but by changing the rules of engagement entirely. Hours later, when they pulled a surviving alien commander from the wreckage of his ship, his compound eyes studied Okafor with something like bewilderment. "You used primitive technology," he said, "but wielded it like art. How can primitives contain such contradictions?" Okafor didn't answer. Her fingers were already moving again, composing the next movement of humanity's survival symphony. The gravity symphony had bought humanity time, but not victory. Admiral Rodriguez stared at the charred remains of what had once been Geneva's pallid nations. The consortium had adapted, bypassing the asteroid belt entirely to strike directly at Earth with relativistic kinetic impactors, simple technology delivered with devastating precision. 8 major cities in ruins. Millions dead. The smoke-filled air burned her lungs as she picked her way through the rubble toward the makeshift command center established in the old CURN facility. "They're saying you authorized this," Hammond accused as she entered, gesturing to the gaunt man working feverishly at a console surrounded by medical equipment. Dr. Thomas Leon didn't look up, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces while medical nanites crawled across his exposed scalp, maintaining the neural filaments that extended into his cerebral cortex. "I did," Rodriguez confirmed. "The Security Council approved Ghost Protocol yesterday." "It's barbaric," Hammond hissed. "We're talking about wiring human brains directly into weapon systems. We're talking about survival, General." She watched Leon's team working on dozens of similar interfaces. Volunteers lay in medical pods, their skulls partially exposed as the neural connections were established. "The consortium adapted to our gravity manipulation because it followed mathematical principles they could analyze and counter. We need something they can't predict." Leon finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot from stims and lack of sleep. "Artificial intelligence is predictable," he explained, voice hoarse. "The consortium's battle computers analyze patterns, predict responses. But the human mind, especially under stress, creates true randomness." "You're turning people into targeting computers," Hammond said in disgust. "No," Leon corrected. "We're allowing human intuition to guide our defenses. The interface doesn't just let them control weapons, it translates their emotional states, instinctive reactions, and creative impulses directly into defensive actions." A young man in civilian clothes approached, nervous but determined. His ID badge identified him as Darius Kim, Data Analysis Division. "I volunteered," he told Hammond quietly. "My family was in Shanghai when it was hit. This is the only way I can help." Before Hammond could respond, the alarm sounded. Long-range sensors had detected a second consortium attack wave approaching Earth orbit. 72 hours later, Rodriguez watched the battle unfold from the Strategic Command Center. The neural interfaces, over 3,000 of them now operational, had transformed Earth's remaining defenses into something the consortium clearly couldn't comprehend. Missile trajectories changed mid-flight based on a gunner's sudden hunch. Shield harmonics fluctuated according to a technician's anxiety levels. Point defense systems prioritized targets based on the collective subconscious fears of 100 linked operators. "They're confused," Leon observed, studying consortium communication intercepts. "Their tactical algorithms can't establish patterns because there aren't any, at least none that make sense to their logic." On the main display, A consortium battle group attempting to establish orbital supremacy over the Pacific suddenly found itself under attack from defense platforms that should have been conserving power. The platforms fired in seemingly random sequences, some using minimal energy for precision strikes, while others overloaded their capacitors for massive energy discharges. Kim's cluster, Leon identified, checking the neural activity monitors. His interface is showing unusual activation patterns. Rodriguez studied the young analyst's biometric readouts. His neural activity was spiking in regions associated with pattern recognition and spatial awareness, but also in areas linked to memory and emotion. On the battlefield, the erratic defense pattern was devastating the consortium formation. 7 capital ships destroyed in under 4 minutes, the rest scattering in disarray. How is he doing that? Hammond asked, previous objections forgotten as he watched the enemy retreat. Hours later, when the attack had been repelled with unprecedented success, Rodriguez found Kim in the medical bay. Many interface operators had suffered seizures or neurological damage from the strain. Some experienced psychotic breaks, unable to distinguish between their consciousness and the weapon systems they had guided. Kim sat quietly, staring at his hands. He seemed intact, but changed somehow. You saved millions of lives today, Rodriguez told him. The tactical division wants to know how you created defense configurations that countered their most advanced vessels. Kim looked up, his expression surprisingly serene. I wasn't thinking about war at all, he said simply. I was remembering how my grandmother's wind chimes moved in a storm. Dr. Nadia Volkov hadn't seen sunlight in 11 years. The reinforced doors of her underground detention facility opened with a hydraulic hiss, and she raised a hand to shield eyes long accustomed to artificial illumination. Dr. Volkov. Admiral Rodriguez stood silhouetted against the harsh daylight. Humanity needs you. Fascinating. Volkov's accent was still thick despite her years in international custody. When I pursued my research, they called me a war criminal. Now that you're losing a war, I'm suddenly a necessary evil. We're not losing, Rodriguez replied, but we're not winning fast enough. The Ghost Protocol had given Earth a reprieve, but the neural defenders were burning out. Each interface operation caused cumulative damage to the human brain. Some operators lasted 10 missions, others only 2. Even Darius Kim, whose wind chime-inspired defense patterns had proven remarkably effective, was showing signs of cognitive degradation. 3 days later, in a repurposed particle accelerator facility beneath the Alps, Volkov addressed the military council. Matter is mostly empty space, she explained, pacing before holographic models of atomic structures. The particles that make up your body are held together by forces we've learned to manipulate. What if ships could temporarily disintegrate and then reform elsewhere? She called it the Lazarus Project, atomic dissolution, and reformation. The theory was elegant. The practical applications were nightmarish. Test footage played on the main screen. Unmanned vessels dissolving into subatomic particles, their constituent atoms briefly existing as probability clouds rather than solid matter. The dissolution worked flawlessly. The reformation was the problem. Rodriguez forced herself to watch as test vessel after test vessel partially rematerialized, twisted metal forming impossible configurations, like sculptures created by a mad god. When they moved to biological subjects, the results were even more horrific. We need volunteers, Volkov announced after the 3rd week of failed tests. The quantum entanglement process requires consciousness to maintain coherence during dissolution. You can't be serious, Hammond objected. After what we just saw. I volunteer. Commander Jackson Chen stepped forward. The hollow-eyed officer had been overseeing Earth's lunar defenses when the consortium bombarded the settlements there. His family had been among the casualties. This isn't about revenge, Commander, Rodriguez said quietly. No, Mom. Chen's expression remained impassive. It's about physics. I minored in quantum mechanics before joining the service. I understand what Dr. Volkov is attempting, and I believe it can work. On the 47th attempt, something changed. Chen's vessel, little more than a reinforced cockpit with dissolution generators, shimmered like heat haze over desert sand. Then it vanished, not with the catastrophic energy discharge of previous failures, but with a gentle ripple of displaced air. For 17 excruciating seconds, nothing existed on the test platform. Rodriguez found she'd been holding her breath. Then, with the same gentle distortion, the vessel reappeared, intact, 2 meters to the left of its starting position. The comm system crackled. Dissolution and reformation successful, Chen reported, his voice steady despite what he'd just experienced, requesting permission to attempt longer spatial displacement. Within days, Chen was leading a squadron of 30 vessels, nicknamed Ghosts by their crews, capable of dissolving into subatomic particles and reforming up to 2 million kilometers away. The technology arrived just in time. The consortium had established a blockade around Saturn's resource-rich moons, cutting off crucial supplies for Earth's reconstruction. The battle that followed defied conventional description. When the Ghosts materialized within the consortium blockade, the alien vessels opened fire, only to hit nothing as the human ships dissolved again, particles scattering like mist through energy beams that required solid matter to affect. They reappeared inside consortium vessels, reforming partially before dissolving again, causing catastrophic internal damage. The tactic was devastating but demanded split-second timing. Each dissolution cycle placed enormous strain on both equipment and pilots. Chen, running out of dissolution cycles, made the ultimate gamble. He materialized directly in the path of a consortium flagship's energy beam. In the microsecond before impact, his ship dissolved one final time. The particles passing through the beam like smoke through a laser, absorbing its energy, before reforming behind the alien vessel and using the captured energy to destroy it. The blockade broke. Earth's supply lines reopened. But in the aftermath, Chen and his pilots reported disturbing experiences. During dissolution, when their atoms existed as probability rather than matter, they had remained conscious, perceiving realities beyond human comprehension. There are things between states of matter, Chen told Rodriguez afterward, his eyes focused on something she couldn't see. Entities that exist in the quantum foam, watching our universe with curious indifference. He smiled slightly, an expression that didn't reach his eyes. They're aware of us now, and they're paying attention. Dr. Aisha Mbeki had spent her career being told her theories were impossible. First as an astrobiologist proposing that life could evolve in vacuum, then as a theoretical physicist suggesting that the void between stars might be more than empty space. Now, in a repurposed biolab orbiting Mars, military leaders and scientists hung on her every word. Space isn't empty, she explained, her hands manipulating the holographic model of what appeared to be a microscopic organism. It's a medium we don't fully understand. These entities, what we're calling void organisms, are designed to exist in vacuum, feeding on background radiation and solar energy. Admiral Rodriguez studied the strange geometric structures. They resembled crystalline snowflakes, but with an unsettling asymmetry that suggested growth and adaptation rather than static formation. And they'll target consortium technology specifically. They're attracted to the exotic energy signatures their ships produce, Mbeki confirmed. The organisms will attach to consortium hulls and subsystems, draining energy and disrupting functions. Like barnacles on a ship's hull, mused Commander Chen. The Lazarus Project pilot had become increasingly withdrawn since his experiences between states of matter, but he remained Earth's most effective void warfare strategist. More like a specialized parasite. Mbeki corrected. We've engineered them with accelerated adaptation capabilities. If the consortium develops countermeasures, the organisms will evolve new approaches within hours instead of generations. General Hammond frowned. You're talking about creating a new form of life just to use as a weapon. I'm talking about survival, Mbeki replied. But her expression suggested the ethical implications weren't lost on her. The void organisms are designed with genetic limiters. Once the conflict ends, we can trigger their dormancy. The deployment was authorized the following day. Pellets of dormant void organisms were scattered throughout strategic regions of space, their microscopic structures invisible to conventional sensors. For weeks, nothing happened. Then reports began filtering in from human outposts. Consortium ships were experiencing cascading system failures. Their hulls were covered with luminescent blooms that glowed with eerie blue-violet light while devouring their energy systems. The consortium responded with sterilization protocols, radiation bursts, and chemical treatments that would have annihilated any conventional organism. But as Mbeki had predicted, the void organisms evolved at an accelerated rate. Each generation adapted to countermeasures within hours. What no one had predicted was their collective behavior. "They're communicating," Mbeki announced during an emergency briefing, her voice tight with concern. "Not just adapting individually, but sharing information across vast distances." The tactical displays showed consortium vessels retreating from Earth's solar system, their hulls aglow with void blooms that pulsed in complex, synchronized patterns. Analysis suggested the pulses weren't random. They carried information. "They're developing rudimentary intelligence," Mbeki continued. "The problem is, we don't know if it's still aligned with our programming or evolving its own agenda." The answer came at the Battle of Europa. A consortium dreadnought, completely covered in glowing void organisms, suddenly changed course and attacked other consortium vessels. Investigation later revealed the organisms had infiltrated the ship's neural interfaces and partially merged with the crew's consciousness. "This is beyond anything we anticipated," Mbeki told the Security Council afterward. Her hands trembled slightly as she displayed the data. "The void organisms aren't just feeding on energy anymore. They're processing information, learning, developing cognitive structures." "You're saying they're becoming sentient?" Hammond asked incredulously. "I'm saying they're becoming something we don't understand," Mbeki replied. "And they're developing faster than we can analyze. We may have created something we can't control." In her private lab, Mbeki studied the long-range sensor data with growing concern. The void organisms spreading throughout the solar system were exchanging increasingly complex information patterns. More disturbing, they had begun transmitting signals toward the galactic core, signals that resembled neither human nor consortium communication protocols. "We need to make a decision," she told Rodriguez later that night. "We can deploy a quantum resonance wave that will render them dormant, but if we do, we lose a powerful advantage against the consortium," Rodriguez finished. Mbeki nodded grimly. "We need to win this war," she argued, "but not at the cost of creating a new form of life that might one day view us as we view the consortium." As they debated on the edge of human sensor range, a patch of seemingly empty space began to glow with the distinctive luminescence of void blooms, forming patterns of impossible complexity, like thoughts taking shape in the vacuum between worlds. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka had spent 3 years in self-imposed isolation on Titan, communicating with Earth only through encrypted quantum channels. The topologist's obsession with higher-dimensional mathematics had made him a pariah in academic circles even before the war. His theories too abstract, too disconnected from conventional physics to be taken seriously. Now, as Admiral Rodriguez's shuttle docked with Titan Research Station, she wondered if desperation had finally driven them to genuine madness. "The dimensional fold drive," Tanaka explained, leading her through holographic models that hurt her eyes to look at. The mathematician moved with frenetic energy, his thin frame nearly vibrating with excitement. "It allows ships to temporarily exist in more than 3 spatial dimensions." "That's impossible," Rodriguez replied automatically. "So was dissolving and reforming human beings," Tanaka countered, nodding toward Commander Chen, who stood silently observing the models with unusual intensity. "So was creating life that thrives in vacuum." Chen spoke for the first time since their arrival. "It's not impossible. The entities I encountered in the quantum foam, they move through dimensions like we move through rooms." Tanaka's eyes lit up. "Exactly. Imagine a 2-dimensional being on a piece of paper," he explained, creating a simple animation. To travel from one point to another, it must traverse the distance along the paper. But a three-dimensional being could simply fold the paper, bringing those points together. He manipulated the hologram, folding the virtual paper so two distant points touched. We are doing the same thing, but with dimensions beyond our perception. The technology defied conventional understanding. Ships equipped with fold drives could seemingly appear inside out, exist in multiple locations simultaneously, or attack from angles that made no geometric sense in conventional space. The human mind isn't designed to perceive beyond three spatial dimensions, Tanaka admitted. Pilots will need cognitive restructuring to operate these vessels. Meaning what, exactly? Rodriguez asked. We have to rewire their brains to perceive higher dimensions, Tanaka stated matter-of-factly. The process is not without risk. 2 months later, Lieutenant Sophia Reyes lay in a neurocognitive recalibration chamber, neural pathways being systematically reconfigured to perceive dimensions beyond normal human experience. The former fighter pilot had volunteered immediately, despite the warnings. Why did you volunteer? Rodriguez had asked her before the procedure began. Reyes had smiled slightly. Because I've always wanted to see more of the universe than everyone else. When she emerged after 3 weeks of cognitive restructuring, her perception had fundamentally changed. She described the experience during her debriefing. It's like suddenly realizing you've been looking at the universe through a keyhole your entire life. And someone just opened the door. In the training simulations, Reyes demonstrated an intuitive grasp of higher dimensional maneuvers that the theoretical physicists had only postulated. Where others struggled with the concept of folding 4-dimensional space, she improvised 7-dimensional tactics that left her instructors baffled and impressed. The consortium had massed its largest fleet yet near Neptune, preparing for what they clearly intended as a final offensive against Earth. Intelligence suggested they had adapted countermeasures against both the Ghost Protocol and the now dormant void organisms. They're expecting conventional warfare, Chen observed, studying the enemy formations. Their battle computers analyze patterns based on 3-dimensional space and linear time. Then let's show them something beyond their comprehension, Rice suggested. 50 ships equipped with fold drives faced more than 500 consortium vessels. What followed defied description in human language. The fold-capable ships slipped between dimensions, striking from vectors impossible in conventional reality. Rice led the assault, her vessel folding through dimensional barriers with an elegance that belied the mathematical complexity involved. Consortium gunners fired at targets that existed partially in higher dimensions, their weapons passing harmlessly through space that appeared empty in conventional reality. The decisive moment came when Reyes, pursued by 3 consortium dreadnoughts, performed what would later be called the Mobius maneuver, folding her ship through 7 dimensions simultaneously, causing the pursuing vessels to unintentionally fire upon themselves from angles that shouldn't exist. In under 40 minutes, the greatest consortium fleet ever assembled was in ruins, their formations shattered by enemies they couldn't predict or even properly perceive. Victory came with its price. Many human pilots returned fundamentally altered by their experiences. Some could no longer relate to 3-dimensional reality, seen through solid objects or witnessing events before they occurred. Rice herself began filling notebooks with equations that, when analyzed, appeared to describe spatial relationships impossible in our universe. We've opened a door we can't close, she told Rodriguez afterward, her eyes tracking movement in spaces no one else could see. They know we're coming now. They? Rodriguez asked. The consortium. Rice smiled enigmatically. The ones who've been watching us all along. The ones who live in the spaces between spaces. She returned to her equations. We've won a battle, Admiral. But we've also announced our presence to something far older than the consortium. Dr. Layla Ademi had spent her life studying communication. As Earth's foremost senolinguist, she had decoded the consortium's transmission protocols within weeks of first contact. As a specialist in information theory, she recognized something the military commanders had missed. The consortium isn't a monolith. she explained to Admiral Rodriguez, manipulating the holographic display to show the distinctive signatures of different alien vessels. It's composed of 7 distinct species with different histories, biologies, and perspectives. What unites them is information control. Rodriguez studied the data with weary eyes. Earth's forces had achieved the impossible, repelling the consortium's greatest defensive using dimensional warfare. But the cost had been staggering. The fold drive pilots were increasingly unstable, reporting visions and perceptions that medical staff couldn't explain. Equipment failures plagued the fold drives themselves, as if higher dimensions were rejecting human intrusion. "Explain," Rodriguez prompted. "Their ruling caste maintains power by restricting scientific innovation to military applications only," Ademi continued. "Look at their communication patterns. 90% of their civilian transmissions follow rigid protocols. Their societies show minimal cultural evolution over centuries. It's enforced stagnation." She called it the knowledge virus, not malware, but a carefully engineered package of scientific principles, philosophical concepts, and technological blueprints designed to trigger intellectual revolutions within consortium societies. "We can't beat them through conventional warfare," Ademi argued. "Even our unconventional approaches have limits, but we can change how they think." The delivery methods were ingenious. Human operatives deliberately allowed themselves to be captured, carrying neural implants containing fragments of the knowledge virus. In prisoner exchanges, apparently empty transport vessels contained atmospheric particles encoded with data that could be absorbed through respiration. Even debris from destroyed human ships was seeded with nanoscale data storage. "Knowledge wants to be free," Ademi told the Security Council. "Even in alien minds." 3 months passed with minimal consortium activity. Intelligence officers speculated they were regrouping after their losses at Neptune. Then came the first indication that the knowledge virus was spreading. A consortium science vessel transmitted an unencrypted request for dialogue directly to Earth. The transmission came from the Telluri, the oldest consortium species. Their crystalline bodies, capable of living for millennia, had evolved on a high-radiation world where silicon-based life had found unusual solutions to information storage and processing. "We have encountered concepts preserved in your debris," the Telluri representative communicated. "They resonate with philosophical traditions our ancestors explored before the Unification Wars. We seek dialogue." More defections followed. The aquatic Merovans, whose collective consciousness made them especially vulnerable to the mimetic reframing embedded in the knowledge virus, broke from consortium authority entirely. Their hive ships, once the backbone of the consortium's communication network, began broadcasting unfiltered information throughout occupied systems. The conflict transformed from conventional warfare to a complex ideological struggle. Some consortium factions became allies, while others fought more desperately as their societies fractured from within. "We're winning without firing a shot," General Hammond observed during a strategy session. "No," Dr. Ademi corrected. "We're winning by sharing ideas." There's a difference. The most dramatic moment came when a consortium dreadnought, commanded by a revolutionary group calling themselves the Enlightened, defected to Earth with a complete database of consortium military technologies. Its commander, a member of the insectoid Frex species, requested asylum and offered technical knowledge in exchange for access to Earth's scientific archives. "Your species thinks differently," the Vrex commander explained through translation software. "You innovate not just for warfare, but for understanding." This concept was purged from our education systems generations ago. Admiral Rodriguez faced a critical decision when the consortium's central authority requested peace talks. Intelligence suggested it could be a trap, but equally possible was that the knowledge virus had reached even the highest levels of their civilization. "We should proceed with caution," Hammond advised. They could be buying time. Rodriguez studied the consortium communication. "No," she said finally. "This reads differently. Their language patterns have changed. They're asking questions instead of making demands." The peace conference, held in neutral space near Alpha Centauri, brought revelations no one had anticipated. The consortium's prime coordinator, an ancient Vrex whose exoskeleton bore the ceremonial etchings of 1,000 military victories, addressed the human delegation directly. "For 12,000 years," she stated, "we have been the undisputed masters of this spiral arm. We ceased to evolve, to innovate, because we had no worthy adversaries." Her compound eyes fixed on Rodriguez. "You have awakened us from intellectual stagnation. We wish to learn from you, as equals rather than conquerors." In the observation chamber, Dr. Ademi smiled. The most effective weapon in humanity's arsenal had never been technology at all. It had been ideas themselves, set free to replicate and evolve in minds that have forgotten how to question. 5 years after the devastating first contact that nearly ended human civilization, Admiral Helena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of Harmonic Station. The massive orbital facility incorporated architectural elements from all participating civilizations, Earth's practical efficiency blending with Telluri crystalline precision, Moravian fluid dynamics, and Vrex geometric complexity. "It's strange," she mused to Dr. Xiang Wei, who stood beside her watching the construction of the outer rings. "We prepared for extinction, and instead found transformation." Wei nodded, his attention seemingly divided between the spectacular view and the equations hovering in his augmented reality display. The quantum physicist, whose initial insight about reality bubbles had started humanity's journey, now worked alongside a team of Telluri crystallographers, their combined knowledge producing mathematical models of unparalleled elegance. "The universe has a way of surprising us," he replied. "Our greatest breakthroughs came when we stopped trying to match their technology and started changing the rules entirely." Below them, in the main concourse, representatives from Earth and all 7 former consortium species gathered for the activation ceremony. The war had ended not with the destruction of either side, but with a profound transmutation of both. Dr. Emily Kagawa, whose gravity manipulation principles were now enhanced by Telluri crystalline mathematics, guided the final calibrations of the harmonic defense network. The system would make large-scale warfare virtually impossible by allowing precise manipulation of fundamental forces throughout explored space. "The principle is simple," she explained to the assembled dignitaries. "We've created a network that can detect the energy signatures of weapons beyond a certain yield and locally alter gravitational constants to render them ineffective." Beside her stood Lieutenant Amara Okafor, the former concert pianist whose improvisational approach to gravity modulation had saved Earth years earlier. Now she conducted a different kind of symphony, training a new generation of human and alien technicians in the art of harmonizing forces rather than weaponizing them. In another section of the station, Commander Chen supervised the preparation of a joint human consortium expedition beyond the galactic rim. His experiences with the Lazarus Project had left him partially existing in multiple states of reality, giving him unique insight into the mysterious entities he had glimpsed while dissolved. "They're not hostile," he assured Rodriguez during their final briefing. "But they are curious. We registered on their awareness when we began manipulating fundamental forces. Now they're watching more closely." Perhaps most remarkable was the collaboration between Dr. Aisha Mbiki and Moravian consciousness-sharing experts. The void organisms, carefully reawakened under controlled conditions, had become the foundation for self-healing habitats that could thrive in environments previously thought uninhabitable. "Life adapts," Mbiki told her Moravian counterparts as they monitored the growth of a void bloom habitat, "not just to survive, but to thrive in conditions we once thought impossible." Lieutenant Sophia Reyes, her perception permanently altered by her experiences in higher dimensions, had established an academy where humans and former consortium species learned to navigate realities beyond conventional spacetime. Her students, many displaying abilities that would have been considered supernatural before the war, were opening pathways to dimensions previously inaccessible. "We're not just exploring space anymore," Reyes explained to new cadets, her eyes tracking movement in planes others couldn't perceive. We're exploring the spaces between spaces. At the center of Harmonic Station, the Convergence Monument stood ready for activation, a massive quantum-entangled structure that simultaneously existed on every member world. Its activation would symbolize the new galactic concord, binding the former enemies in a network of instantaneous communication and shared knowledge. As Rodriguez approached the activation platform alongside the Consortium Prime Coordinator, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Human innovation had not just revolutionized void warfare, it had ultimately made such warfare obsolete. The universe is vast beyond comprehension, she told the assembled representatives, her voice carrying to every corner of the station, and largely indifferent to our existence. What matters is not the technologies we build, or the weapons we wield, but our capacity to recognize ourselves in the alien, to find common purpose across the void. The Prime Coordinator, the same Vrex who had once commanded the fleet that devastated Earth's defenses, stepped forward. "We came as conquerors," she acknowledged, her translator conveying the complex harmonics of her native speech. "We leave as students, and perhaps as friends." Together, they activated the monument. A holographic map of known space materialized above the assembly, no longer divided into human or consortium territories, but shown as a single interconnected realm of exploration and discovery. In that moment, looking at stars that now represented opportunity rather than threat, Admiral Rodriguez understood the most profound innovation of all. Humanity had not just revolutionized how wars were fought in the void.